Imagine yourself standing on the edge of a shimmering lake, the water catching the late afternoon sun like a sheet of polished glass. The air carries the faint scent of pine and damp moss, and the soft lapping of waves against the shore hums. In the background, the rhythm of your life here is steady, predictable, a quiet harmony of morning coffee on the porch and evenings watching herons glide over the water, a theft of your very soul. This is where our story begins, in the small lakeside community of Willow Bend, where one woman's greed threatens to unravel everything. The homeowner, Daniel Harper, is no stranger to hard work. A carpenter by trade, his hands are calloused from years of shaping wood, with the promise of growth. Creaks underfoot, but the view of the lake, framed by towering pines, makes it priceless. For Daniel, this land is more than a deed. It's a legacy, a promise to his late wife that he'd build a life of quiet beauty. Enter Margaret Voss, the HOA president, known to the neighborhood as the Willow Bend, which her presence is like a cold gust on a summer day, sharp and unwelcome. Her voice, nasal and clipped, carries the weight of authority she's granted herself, and her eyes, narrow and glinting, seem to catalog every neighbor's flaw. She's the kind of woman who measures lawn heights with a ruler and sends violation notices for unapproved mailbox colors. Margaret has decided that Daniel's waterfront, a 50-foot stretch of prime shoreline, words are a gut punch. Due to an error in property lines, your waterfront access is under review. A fading dream, disputed land. Letter claims a surveyor's mistake. You can almost hear them, can't you? The soft murmurs of neighbors on their porches, the rustle of curtains as they peek at the drama unfolding. Margaret doesn't wait for a response. She's already hired contractors, their trucks rumbling down the quiet street, kicking up dust that settles like a haze over Daniel's garden. The structure is ostentatious, a gleaming monstrosity of polished wood and steel, stretching 30 feet into the lake. It's not just a dock, it's a statement, a flag planted in Daniel's territory, a constant assault on the peace Daniel cherishes. He confronts her that evening, striding across the gravel path to her doorstep. The air is thick with the scent of sawdust and lake water, and the setting sun paints the sky in hues of bruised purple. Margaret stands on her lawn, supervising the workers, her arms crossed, a smug curl to her lips. "This is my land, Daniel," she says, her voice dripping with condescension. The surveyor confirmed it. Her words are a slap, delivered with the confidence of someone who's never been challenged. Daniel, his jaw tight, holds up his deed, the paper trembling slightly in his grip. "This says otherwise," he replies, his voice steady but laced with a quiet fury. Margaret doesn't flinch. "Voss." It's bold, red, and screamingly out of place among his carefully tended marigolds. Neighbors watch from their windows, their silence louder than any protest. Some sympathize with Daniel, their eyes meeting his with a flicker of guilt, but none dare cross Margaret. Daniel tries the legal route, calling his lawyer, a harried man named Tom, who smells faintly of old coffee and ink. Office, maybe even a cousin in the surveyor's department. As days turn to weeks, Margaret's dock takes shape, its shadow falling across Daniel's porch like a taunt. She hosts parties on it, her laughter carrying over the water, sharp and grating. She invites select neighbors, those who've paid their dues, and kissed her ring while Daniel watches from his window, his coffee bitter in his mouth. She even names the dock Voss Victory, a plaque gleaming at its entrance. The audacity is breathtaking, isn't it? Imagine yourself in Daniel's shoes, the weight of injustice pressing against your chest, the constant struggle to hold on to what's yours. Daniel's protests letters to the HOA, calls to the county, even a heated town hall meeting go nowhere. Margaret dominates the meeting, her voice cutting through the room like a blade. This is about community standards, she declares, her eyes sweeping over the crowd, daring anyone to dissent. Daniel stands, his work boots scuffing the polished floor, and speaks of his deed, his rights, his years of toil, their pens scratching notes that will never see action. The room smells of stale donuts and tension, and Daniel leaves with nothing but a pounding headache and a growing resolve. By now, the dock is complete, a gleaming monument to Margaret's entitlement. She lounges on it daily, sipping wine as the lake reflects her triumph. Daniel, meanwhile, feels the rhythm of his life unraveling. His garden wilts under the stress, his mornings no longer peaceful. The lake, once his refuge, now feels like a prison, its beauty tainted by her presence. As he stares at the dock, its pilings driven, the theft of his sanctuary has pushed Daniel to a breaking point. But this is only the beginning, isn't it? On the shore of Lake Willow at midnight, the air cool and heavy with the scent of damp reeds and pine. The lake is a mirror of stars, its surface unbroken, save for the faint ripple of a fish breaking free, a dark silhouette against the moonlit horizon, its polished wood gleaming faintly, like a predator's bared teeth. But tonight, Daniel isn't here to mourn. His mornings, once filled with the quiet ritual of coffee and gardening, are now consumed by phone calls to his lawyer, Tom, whose voice grows warier with each conversation. The legal system, Tom explains, is a slow beast, and Margaret's connections in the county office have tangled Daniel's case in red tape, have left him drained, the stale air of those rooms clinging to his clothes like defeat. But defeat isn't in Daniel's nature. He's a man whose fixed, broken thing stables, roofs, lives in this dock, this violation of his land, is something he's determined to unmake. The idea of sabotage comes to him in whispers, born in the sleepless hours when he stares at the lake, the water's gentle lapping a contrast to the chaos in his mind. No, this requires something subtler, something irreversible. His carpenter's mind turning over possibilities like a puzzle. He considers loosening bolts, cutting supports, but each idea risks discovery. Then, late one evening, while scrolling through a boating forum, he stumbles across a post about underwater demolitions, mall-controlled explosives used to clear old pilings. It's dangerous, illegal, but the thought takes root, burrowing deep like the willows along his shore. Daniel isn't reckless, though he knows he can't do this alone. Enter Jake, a former Navy diver who lives on the far side of Willow Bend. Jake's a quiet man, his face weathered by salt and sun, his hands scarred from years underwater. He and Daniel met years ago at a local bar, bonding over fishing stories and the lake's hidden currents. Jake owes Daniel a favor. Daniel built his daughter's treehouse for free when Jake was between jobs, and now Daniel calls it in. They meet at Daniel's porch, the creak of the floorboards mingling with the distant croak of frogs. The air smells of coffee and lake water, and Daniel lays out his plan, his voice low but steady. Jake listens, his eyes narrowing, not in judgment, but in calculation. "It's risky," Jake says, his voice like gravel. "But if you're sure, I know a guy who can get what we need." Garage, its contents wrapped in oilcloth for underwater charges. Each the size of a soda can, designed for precision demolition. The plan is simple. Jake will dive at night, plant the charges at the base of the pilings, and set a timer for 48 hours. When the charges go off, the dock will collapse into the lake, leaving no trace of sabotage, just a structural failure Margaret can't pin on Daniel. Preparation consumes them. Daniel spends his days acting normal, tending his wilted garden, nodding to neighbors, even waving at Margaret as she sips wine on her dock. The effort to mask his intent is exhausting but necessary. Imagine yourself in his place, the constant struggle to smile while your heart burns, to play the part of a beaten man while plotting rebellion. At night, he and Jake meet in Jake's garage, the air thick with the tang of motor oil and metal. They study the dock's blueprints. From the county office, by a sympathetic clertioned map, the piling's locations. Jake practices with dummy charges in his backyard pool. Asleep, the only sound the rustle of leaves in the breeze. Daniel stands watch on his porch, his heart pounding, the scent of damp earth grounding him. Jake, in a black wetsuit, slips into the lake from Daniel's shore, his gear barely making a ripple. The water swallows him, and Daniel waits, his eyes fixed on the dock's silhouette. Minutes stretch into hours, the air growing colder, the stars sharper. He imagines Jake below, navigating the murky depths, the lake's currents tugging at him. This is his land, his fight, and the rhythm of his life depends on it. Jake emerges just before dawn, his face pale but triumphant. The charges are set, the timers ticking. They shake hands, a silent pact sealed in the pre-dawn chill. Daniel feels a strange calm, like the lake after a storm. He's crossed a line, but there's no turning back. The dock, Margaret's monument to greed, is now a ticking clock, and Daniel can almost hear its countdown in the lapping of the waves. The next 2 days are agony. Daniel goes through the motions: work, groceries, small talk with neighbors, but his mind is on the lake. Margaret returns, oblivious, hosting another party on the dock, her laughter grating across the water. Daniel watches from his window, his coffee cold, his hands clenched. Jake checks in once, his voice curt, "Stay cool." Daniel tries, but the weight of what's coming presses against him. Daniel wakes to a sky heavy with clouds, the air thick with the promise of rain. He steps onto his porch, the familiar creak of the boards steadying him, and looks at the dock. It stands proud, mocking him, but he knows its time is short. The lake is still, its surface like glass, and Daniel feels a strange kinship with it both. Of them waiting, poised for upheaval, he sips his coffee, the bitter taste grounding him, and waits for the moment when Margaret's world will come crashing down. The stage is set, isn't it? The charges are in place, the timers ticking, and the lake holds its breath. What happens next will shatter the fragile peace of Willowbend, and Daniel's rebellion will ripple far beyond his shore. Ready for segment 3. Please type continue to proceed. Imagine yourself on the shore of Lake Willow, the air heavy with the scent of impending rain, a metallic temps that clings to your skin. The lake lies still, its surface a dull pewter under a sky bruised with clouds, as if it senses the chaos about to unfold. Daniel Harper stands on his porch, his coffee mug warm in his hands, the familiar creak of the floorboards anchoring him. Across the water, Margaret Voss's dock juts into the lake, its polished wood and steel pilings gleaming faintly, a monument to her greed. But beneath its surface, for charges wait their timers counting down to zero. The rhythm of Daniel's life, disrupted for so long, is about to shift, and the constant struggle against Margaret's tyranny is poised to erupt into something raw and unstoppable. It's mid-morning when it happens. Daniel is in his garden, kneeling in the damp soil, trying to salvage his wilted marigolds. The neighborhood is quiet, save for the distant hum of a lawnmower and the soft patter of early raindrops. Margaret is on her dock, as she often is, sipping mimosas, their laughter sharp and artificial. The dock's Voss victory plaque catches the weak light, a taunt that twists Daniel's gut. He keeps his head down, his hands working the earth, waiting for the moment he and Jake engineered. The first sign is a low groan, like the lake itself exhaling. It's subtle, barely noticeable, but Daniel freezes, his fingers sinking into the soil. The sound grows a deep, grinding creak, wood and metal protesting. Margaret's laughter falters, and her guests turn, their glasses glinting in the gray light. Then, with a sudden, sickening crack, the dock lurches, one end dips sharply, sending a mimosa glass tumbling into the water with a delicate splash. The pilings, weakened by Jake's charges, give way, and the structure collapses in slow motion, a cascade of splintered wood and twisted steel plunging into the lake. The water roils, waves slapping the shore, and a cloud of silt rises, turning. The clear depths, murky, Margaret's scream pierces the air, high and jagged, like a wounded animal. She stumbles as the dock buckles beneath her, her arms flailing, her white linen dress soaking as she falls to her knees in the shallow water. Her guests scramble, one man slipping and landing hard, his polo stained with mud. The Voss victory plaque sinks last, glinting briefly before vanishing into the depths. Neighbors emerge from their homes, drawn by the noise, their voices a low murmur of shock and curiosity. Daniel stands slowly, wiping his hands on his jeans, his heart pounding, but his face carefully neutral. Imagine yourself in his place, the weight of months lifting, the sight of Margaret's empire crumbling into the lake like a fever breaking. But Margaret isn't done. Her eyes, wild and blazing, lock onto Daniel across the water. She rises, water streaming from her dress, her hair plastered to her face, and points a trembling finger. "You," she shrieks, her voice carrying over the lake, sharp enough to cut through the rain. "You did this." The accusation hangs in the air, and neighbors' heads turn toward Daniel, their gazes heavy with suspicion or silent approval. Daniel says nothing, his boots rooted in his garden, the scent of wet earth steadying him. But Margaret's fury is a force of nature, and she wades through the shallows, her movements jerky, her allies trailing behind like a bedraggled court. She reaches his property, her shoes squelching in the mud, and the confrontation explodes. "You sabotaged my dock," she screams, close enough now that Daniel can smell the champagne on her breath, mixed with the sour tang of lake water. Her face is a mask of rage, her lipstick smudged, her eyes bloodshot. Daniel meets her gaze, his voice calm but firm, her mouth opening and closing like a fish pulled from the lake. Then she lunges. It's sudden, feral, her manicured nails clawing at Daniel's face. He staggers back, catching her wrists, but she's stronger than she looks. Fueled by months of entitlement, and now humiliation, they grapple in the rain, mud slick underfoot. The air thick with the scent of churned earth and anger. Margaret's allies hesitate, their polos wilting in the downpour. But a burly man named Carl joins in, grabbing Daniel's arm. The fight turns brutal, a tangle of limbs and grunts. Daniel's work-hardened muscles straining against Carl's bulk and Margaret's fury. A gasps, another pulls out a phone, the cameras flash-cutting through the... Daniel lands a punch, his fist connecting with Carl's jaw, the impact sending a jolt up his arm. Carl stumbles, blood trickling from his lip, staining the rain red. Margaret claws at Daniel's back, her nails drawing welts, but he twists free, shoving her into the mud. She lands hard, her dress ruined, her scream more rage than pain. The lake watches, its waves now lapping steadily, as if applauding the chaos. Daniel steps back, panting, his flannel-torn blood mixing with rain on his cheek. Margaret scrambles to her feet, her eyes promising vengeance, but the fight has drawn a crowd, and she senses the shift. Neighbors whisper, some shaking their heads, others hiding smirks. Her authority, once ironclad, is slipping like the dock into the lake. The police arrive minutes later, their sirens a distant wail that grows sharp. 2 officers, raincoats glistening, step onto the scene, their boots sinking into the mud. They separate Daniel and Margaret, taking statements as the rain intensifies, drumming on the lake like 1,000 tiny fists. Margaret's voice is shrill, accusing Daniel of sabotage, assault, anything she can think of. Daniel.com now points to his deed, still safe in his house, and recounts the land theft. Margaret is led away, her allies trailing their mimosas forgotten in the wreckage. Daniel returns to his porch, the creak of the boards a familiar comfort. The dock is gone, its remains a dark smudge in the water, and the lake seems to breathe easier, its surface smoothing as the rain slows. Neighbors linger, some offering nods of support, others avoiding his gaze. The constant struggle, the weight of Margaret's theft, has shifted but not lifted. Daniel knows this isn't over. Margaret's fury, her connections, mean she'll fight back. But for now, he sips his cold coffee, the bitter taste grounding him, and watches the lake reclaim its peace. The chaos has broken the surface, hasn't it? The dock is gone, Margaret's humiliated, but her claws are still sharp, and the truth about her scheme is yet to emerge, exposing secrets deeper than the lake itself. Imagine yourself on the shore of Lake Willow at dusk, the sky a soft lavender, the air laced with the cool scent of water and fading summer grass. The lake is calm now, its surface a mirror for the first stars. The wreckage of Margaret Voss's dock, a faint shadow beneath the waves. Daniel Harper sits on his porch, the familiar creak of the floorboards, a quiet companion, his coffee replaced by a glass of whiskey that catches the last light. The fight on the shore, the collapsed dock, struggle isn't over. The truth, buried deeper than the lake's silt, is about to rise, and with it, a victory Daniel never dared imagine. The days following the collapse are tense. The neighborhood, a web of whispers and sidelong glances. Margaret, undeterred by her public humiliation, doubles down. She files a lawsuit against Daniel, claiming sabotage and assault. Her lawyer, a slick man in a tailored suit, delivering the papers to Daniel's doorstep with a smirk. The air that morning is thick with the scent of damp leaves, and Daniel reads the summons in his garden, the soil still churned from the fight. The lawsuit demands compensation for the dock and emotional distress, a sum that would bankrupt him, calling for Daniel's expulsion from Willow Bend, their signatures a stark black against crisp white paper. The pressure is suffocating, but Daniel's resolve hardens his carpenter's hands. Itching to fix this, as he's fixed so much before, he meets with his lawyer. "Something's off," Tom mutters, his pen tapping the desk. The report, stamped by the county, shows a boundary shift that benefits Margaret, but the numbers don't align with older records. Tom digs deeper, requesting archived surveys and tax documents, his voice growing sharper with each call. Daniel, sitting across from him, feels the weight of the constant struggle, but Tom's suspicion is a lifeline. "We need proof," Tom says, "and we need it fast." The breakthrough comes unexpectedly, not from Tom, but from a neighbor, Ellen Carter. Ellen lives across the street, a retired librarian with a garden rivaling Daniel's, her roses heavy with scent even in late fall. She visits Daniel one evening, her steps hesitant on his gravel path, the air cool and tinged with wood smoke. Over tea in Daniel's kitchen, the steam curling like a shared secret, Ellen confesses. "I saw something," she says, her voice low, her hands trembling around her cup. Margaret paid off the surveyor. Ellen's words are a spark, igniting Daniel's hope. She'd been pruning her roses, hidden by a trellis, when she heard Margaret's nasal voice bartering with a man Ellen later recognized as the county surveyor. Ellen, fearing Margaret's wrath, kept silent, but the dock's collapse and the fight stirred her conscience. "I should have spoken." Daniel, his jaw tight, thanks her, the scent of chamomile tea grounding him. This is the truth he's been chasing. The room smells of stale coffee and sweat. The revelation ripples through Willow Bend neighbors, gathering in hushed clusters, their voices carrying over the lake like the rustle of leaves. Margaret's allies falter. Tom presents the evidence in court, the courtroom air thick with the scent of polished wood and tension. The judge, a stern woman with gray hair, reviews the documents, Daniel's deed, the falsified survey, Holt's testimony and rules, in Daniel's favor. Margaret's claim to his land is voided, her lawsuit dismissed, and she's ordered to pay Daniel's legal fees plus damages for the trespass. And Daniel exhales the weight of but the victory isn't complete until Margaret's fall is public. The HOA holds an emergency meeting, the community center packed, the air heavy with murmurs and the faint smell of floor wax. Neighbors, once cowed by Margaret, speak out. Another admits she forged signatures on HOA votes. Elon's testimony, now public, emboldens others, and the board votes to remove Margaret as president. She storms out, her heels clicking, her face a mask of fury, but her power is broken. The Willow Bend, which is dethroned, the lake stretching before him, its surface catching the moon's soft glow. The air is crisp, scented with pine and the promise of winter, and the rhythm of his life feels closer, like a song he's remembering. His garden, neglected but resilient, shows signs of recovery. the marigolds lifting their heads. Neighbors nod to him now, some offering quiet apologies, others sharing stories of Margaret's past schemes. Jake, the diver, stops by, his scarred hands clapping Daniel's shoulder. Margaret's fraud, exposed like the lake's depths, has restored Daniel's land and his peace. The constant struggle, the theft of his sanctuary, is over, and the lake, once a battleground, is his again. As he sips his whiskey, the glass cool against his palm, Daniel feels the weight of victory, not just over Margaret, but over the chaos she wrought.